Hi, and welcome back to CIDDL for another research and practice brief. Today we're joined by Cynthia Curry, and I'm Philip Garza. I'm a graduate research assistant here at CIDDL. So, Cynthia, could you give us a brief introduction of yourself and some of the work you're currently doing?
Sure. Thanks so much for inviting me onto your program. I have been a long time follower and admirer of CIDDL's work, so it's really a pleasure to contribute and share some of the work that we're doing at NCADEMI. I'm the current project director of NCADEMI, and NCADEMI stands for the National Center on Accessible Digital Educational Materials and Instruction. We, like CIDDL, are funded by the Office of Special Education Programs at the U.S. Department of Education. And our primary role is to ensure that students with disabilities from pre-K through high school graduation receive accessible digital educational materials. But that also includes accessible materials that may have been originally developed in print. So even though our primary focus is on digital accessibility here in the year 2026, knowing that so much of what's being used in schools starts as digital. We also recognize that there's a lot of print materials that are being used that pose barriers to students with disabilities. So we focus on both of those areas, supporting both state education agencies and school districts with developing systems that really target the barriers that are inherently can be part of those materials, whether it's through procurement or teacher-created materials or teacher-selected materials. And of course, as part of that, thinking about the educational materials that are used in schools, that really generalizes to other areas of the system that are responsible for ensuring that staff, parents, community members with disabilities can also access whatever digital assets or communications or materials that are being provided by that system.
Okay, so I guess you named some of those challenges, but what would you say are the most pressing challenges that are facing schools and preparation programs? And then what motivated you on to take this work?
So, well, I'll start with the motivation first. I have my origins in education as a science teacher. So I come at this from the general education perspective. I was a middle and high school science teacher prior to going on to get my master's degree. And it was while I was getting my degree in graduate school that I came across a center that was funded at the time, had just been funded under a Preparing Tomorrow's Teachers to Use Technology, speaking of teacher preparation, PT3 under the Clinton administration. So this is dating myself to 2000. And this center had just received funding to develop some online web-based teacher education materials that would be disseminated nationally. And the topics were web accessibility, universal design for learning, augmentative and alternative communication, assistive technology across general ed and special ed. So I really didn't realize at the time what I had stumbled on. I look back on it now and realize how fortunate I was. At the time, I did have some experience in programming and course development, so that gave me, an entry into the position. And I never looked back. I met a lot of people as part of that position with disabilities who were using assistive technology that were contracted as part of that project. And it just really drew me in because one of the reasons that I went back to graduate school was because I realized I wasn't prepared to teach all students. I had come from an engineering and computer programming career before going into teaching. And I was hired because what engineer can't teach middle and high school science? Well, we learned very quickly that you can know the content, but unless you really understand pedagogy and understand the diverse ways that that individuals learn, especially adolescents and youth, you really won't be prepared. So that is what drew my curiosity, was the opportunity to learn about creating technology that works with individuals with disabilities who use assistive technology. And then I never looked back. I stayed on and continued to work for the Maine Department of Education as a statewide integration mentor. I worked with with Maine's Assistive Technology Act program, implementing what at the time was the National Instructional Materials Accessibility Standard in the mid-2000s. Worked at the University of Southern Maine in teacher education on an OSEP 325T project. So for the past 20 to 30 years, I guess, I've really been working in this field.
And
And
it
I would
sounds,
say, oh, go ahead.
I'm about to say, it sounds like you didn't choose it, it chose you.
I would say it was quite serendipitous. It was a good match, and I did have a sister who was born with multiple disabilities, and so I was really prone to this area because of that as well. She was born before the Education of All Handicapped Children's Act in 1974. So at the time, even then, I realized I was going to school, but she wasn't. And I think I think that had an impact on me that I didn't realize until later on when I came across these opportunities, and it really plugged into an area of passion that I never would have known otherwise.
So what are some things that you think special education teachers, teacher educators, and school leaders need to understand about digital accessibility and accessible educational materials?
I think from my experience, the most important thing to know is that it takes some training and it takes some practice, but it's not unknowable. I think we often come across people who are concerned about digital accessibility thinking that, well, it's too technical, it's somebody else's responsibility, I don't have time. And I would say what's most important for leadership within a system is to really make it an expectation, build it into whatever initiatives are already happening, because digital accessibility or providing accessible materials really generalizes and transcends across all areas of education. So in the process of training on high quality instructional materials, embed the characteristics and indicators of what makes a quality accessible material for individuals who use assistive technology. Assessment. What are the considerations to ensure that students with disabilities have access to assessments? In the selection of materials that are going to be used the next day. I was a science teacher, so I know that feeling of I have a week's worth of lesson planning to do. Where am I going to find these resources? Because I'm kind of bored with the textbook and I want to make sure that I'm supplementing with more interesting and engaging content. In those types of conversations with teachers and understanding what those sources are, what are appropriate sources of materials to supplement your curriculum, what are you looking for when it comes to digital accessibility? And of course, creating materials. So when teachers are learning how to create their own digital documents, videos, embedding those steps that are required to ensure accessibility from the beginning and make it something that is part of those other expectations of making sure that what's being developed is appropriate and useful and engaging for students.
Yeah, and on that note, like how technology is just advancing like at rapid pace, where do you see like the future of this field going?
I do worry about that, but I don't think it's any different from where we've been in the past. We had the introduction of the World Wide Web, obviously, and we have the web content accessibility guidelines that support that, or emerging technologies, hardware that we had. Section 508 came along to ensure that there are considerations for making sure that hardware is accessible. Augmented reality, virtual reality. We've come across all of these technologies, and along the way, accessibility has been something that's been considered by some of the most innovative developers out there. I worry more about startups and smaller vendors that may not be aware of accessibility, their obligations. I think that our larger vendors, both in education and other mainstream commercial areas, are paying attention to accessibility, are incorporating it, both because of the law and it being a requirement, also because they know what a difference it's made to their reputations and to the way that they're perceived by the public as being as being ethically oriented about their products and making sure that they're usable by everybody. I worry, like I said, more about the smaller startups, and I think we'll see more and more of those as AI continues to emerge.
All right, so I think you might have touched on this a little bit. Maybe you can expand a little bit more. So, what should teacher preparation programs and educational leaders prioritize as they work to build educator capacity around accessibility and assistive technology?
Would you repeat that, Philip? Are you asking
Sure.
about what NCADEMI is doing in that area?
Yeah, like so what do you think teacher preparation programs should prioritize as they work to build like teacher capacity in the area of like assistive tech?
So at NCADEMI, we actually do have a targeted TA, targeted technical assistance program for teacher education. We are partnering with an organization called Teach Access. We have a community of practice for preparation programs, and we call it our Preparing Educators for Digital Accessibility Community of Practice. And it targets both teacher education as well as administrator education, because we know that the way that large scale change happens or large scale initiatives are successful in education systems is when leaders are prioritizing these changes. So as part of the community of practice, it's both administrator prep and teacher prep. And we're partnering with Teach Access because Teach Access has a 10-year proven model of incorporating teaching accessibly into higher education, but it's more focused on computer science and sort of the more STEM types of disciplines than it is in teacher education. So Teach Access has not applied this model to teacher education. So we're really excited to partner with Teach Access and to help, not necessarily, I mean, I think by extension, teacher educators and administrator educators are going to improve their own accessibility practices, but the goal really is to embed naturally within whatever the curriculum is, whether it's a special education pathway or a general education pathway, what is it that those candidates need to know about accessibility and embed it within the program, and to help them understand where do those principles of accessibility fit into their courses or into the curriculum. So it's thinking about whatever is being taught, again, not force fitting or trying to fit accessibility into that, but just naturally, if you're thinking about good teaching, whether it's a content methods class, if it's math, how do we ensure that math notation is accessible to all students as part of the curriculum? How do we convey complex concepts in plain language through digital materials? What is there to know to make sure that if print materials are being provided, what are those pathways? What's available for resources in whatever context or setting or whatever state or district you're in? What are the resources for providing those materials in an accessible format? If it's procurement, so leadership, ed tech, so preparing our next generation of digital learning leaders, what is it that we need to make sure is known about the deployment of technology that is inherently accessible and is going to work with AT? What are the questions that need to be asked of vendors and publishers in that process? Preparing principals and other leaders around what are the decisions across all the different parts of the system to ensure digital accessibility is a priority.
And then this is getting to our final question. Are there any other tools or resources that you'd like to share before we head out?
Yes, I would love to share. I'll share NCADEMI's homepage, which is ncademy.org. So that's NCADEMI, again, standing for National Center
Yeah,
on Accessible Digital Educational Materials and Instruction.
we'll be sure to include that link in the description
Excellent.
below here and also in our written form of this.
Great. Thanks, Philip. And I'll also, if we could also provide some other links to specific
Sure.
resources that I think would be broadly applicable and of interest to CIDDL's audience. We have a Canvas course on we call it our Accessibility Fundamentals course at NCADEMI, and currently it has 9 core accessibility skills that are applicable to anybody who's creating digital content. And we'll be adding more tool guides to that Canvas course. We also have procurement guidance, and we have an EdTech directory that we're currently at about 50 products, but it'll continue to grow. And for all of those EdTech products, there is publicly available accessibility information accompanied by guidance for procurement, such as what do you do with an accessibility conformance report, what types of questions to be asking vendors. We have guidance for evaluating materials for accessibility as well as creating them.
Excellent. Just want to thank you so much for your time today. And if you guys will check out our research and practice brief section of our CIDDL website to learn more. And thank you again.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.